And they say like, no, 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 no.
Suppose we start in the evening. Maybe some of you are doing a kind of speed dating after the previous age. But I think tonight will be quite interesting. We've launched this new series. I prefer not to. Why? Because we think that in, say, the yes profession that is architecture, often, or maybe, often it's really important to say no, to dare to say no, to have a kind of productive resistance, and also to be very aware of when you say no, and even this no could start to produce other output. As you can see on the list, we start with Jan de Vylder, we have Philip Ursprong, Arno Brandenburger, and Christian Kees. This is for semester 1. Semester 2 will be even more exciting.
Thanks.
On the whole, but as you can see, the names are quite heterogeneous, and that's something that we're actually looking for. So each lecture for sure will be a different kind of approach on Activism. Will be, I think, I hope at least for sure tonight, a very personal account of Activism. We're very glad, honored that Jan accepted to format this first lecture. I was also very pleased last night when I got a text message from Jan saying that he found something.
Me also, me also, honestly.
Because I think that's in a way the whole effort of giving a lecture. It's not a kind of prefabricated recount of what we've done, or what in this case you've done over the last past of years. We're kind of reformatting of this these insights, this production. So looking very much forward to it.
Okay, Peter, first of all, thank you, of course, because if I know yet somehow also the long list for the next semester, and I see the short list of this semester, I was not expecting exactly myself in whatever list, but seemingly I have to open the whole series. So you made me nervous, you know. Yes, because it's not that easy to talk on things. Oh my God, it's going by itself. I hope this does not. It's not so easy to talk. Well, we are used as architects, like you just saw of Anna, to talk about your work, and you just talk about your work. And lately I got confronted with some invitations to talk about something. And that means that you have to take a little bit distance from what you're doing, especially in this kind of questioning, in which I recognize very much Peter's own idea of where architectural, he calls it production, should be about. So I was confronted by that. I prefer not to. I try to find for myself those moments where eventually, it moves by itself, very sorry, where eventually it might have happened, or the occasion of the no question in some or other way came along. Maybe the way the topic is announced, it suggests a kind of real huge moment of saying no, of moments that no happens. To me, this element of the no is maybe a much more diverse and sometimes even little moment on all kind of moments I experienced as architects while making projects, my debating projects, and so on. So that's why I say, like, sometimes smaller, sometimes more political, sometimes poetic, sometimes unneeded, sometimes needed, sometimes chances, sometimes nothing. I have walked through the small little history of my office and selected about 13 moments. It was something about yes and no. But together with that, I introduce you two references. The first is Francis Alice, and the second is Ante Timmermans. Sorry, I'm really drawn into the previous lecture. Yeah, you can see it. I hope it stops doing this. Francis Alice is an artist living in Mexico City. He is a Belgian. He is, in fact, an architect. And what you see here is a movie still out of his project, The Green Line in East Jerusalem, in which he passes by a certain border I will not explain, and I even do not remember all the details of the exact history, but it's about a borderline that has been drawn on a plan at a certain status of history in Israel, and he now walks that line, and while he walks that line, he has a can with green paint, and he lets drip out a line. He did it also in other circumstances with other colors, but here it's the most known is the Green Line project of Francis Alice. And Alice says this about it. Sometimes doing something poetic can become political, and sometimes doing something political can become poetic. That was maybe what yesterday evening or yesterday throughout the day helped me to think about what we do in our practice and how sometimes something can be political, although people felt it as a poetic thing, and the opposite way around. So, once again, the video still. Check out this work, it's worth thinking about it. This is the list. I will not explain any project completely, because that's not the point. I just highlight some projects for some circumstances. This is a project for Le Ballet de la Baie, production studio for a theater and a dance company. We look now to the facade, which is a facade of cement tiles, and some cement tiles are like blasted away by the wind, and in fact, that's what everyone always says about this type of facade, that sooner or later, after a couple of decades, they fade away, and people call it then, at that time, ugly. We realized it from the first day, together with Bas Metz, in the hope that at first plants could grow in it, and then at second, when we saw the execution, we hoped no plants should grow in it, and it should stay a design as such. There is one facade of the whole project, except the glazed ones. There is one closed facade that does not have this cement tiles. It's a white facade, and this white facade goes along the street. And initially, it was meant to be also covered with the cement tiles. But at that moment, we had a councillor of the city of Ghent who had to deliver the building permit. And as he heard about the idea of cladding the building with that cement tile, which had that negative perception for so many people, the cement tile is something typically they use in Flanders to cover waiting walls in between buildings, and those buildings are often waiting decades, and then the wind does its things. This councillor said, "You don't believe it, that we would cover a building, or that we would give a permit in this city to cover a building on the most important facade along the street with those cement tiles, especially in this cultural heritage zone of the Bijloke." You have to know it's a huge kind of old hospital, not in the middle of the city, but almost in the middle of the city, beautifully, but now today a cultural island in the city. So he refused to let us clad the wall with the cement tiles. And he said to us, "This is a material for blind waiting walls," and that's the word we need to remember, the blind waiting walls. "You never use it for a main facade." So ahead of even accepting the building permit, he said, "I will refuse it anyway if you do so." We were stuck with a client, I have to say a very good client, Le Ballet Seyd Labé and Lot, cultural, well, very with us with all this idea. They love the idea of the cement tile as being a humble material to clad a building. And almost 1 year, the project stopped. Because what happened is that the councillor also found out that the soon he had announced that he would refuse this, everyone sat around him, come on, you don't do this. You have to give the freedom and this material, what is nice about it, that you will use it in another way, and so on and so on. So he got alone in his position, but he refused to change ideas. So often we met with the clients, and the client said, no, 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 go for it. We want you to do it. And at a certain moment, you have to wait for such a moment. We sat together with them and with some actors, choreographers, musicians, composers. And when we were drinking a glass of white wine, there came the idea that we maybe could serve a way out, saying, can I just... And it goes by itself again. And the idea came, it's a blind wall, but let's make, can we? Oh, it stopped. So he said that the idea often came that we said like a blind wall, a blind wall, a blind wall, a blind wall, a blind wall. And then someone said like a mute wall. It's not only blind, it's also silent, because inside our production studios, dealing at 110 dB of noise, music, whatever you want, and the walls are thick of concrete, so it can't get out. So the wall is maybe also a mute wall. And starting from that point, it's annoying that it goes by itself, and I cannot... all of a sudden, starting from that point, someone else said like, yeah, and then maybe we can do the opposite. We can make what we do inside send out to the outside, but in a controlled way. We can make maybe special music for the wall. And we can do a new project with the wall. And all of a sudden, everyone was with us. So what we did is we made this drawings. I made those drawings. Each drawing has another color, some other details. And they selected some music and composed some pieces of music. And we made a kind like from its own going movie with the music, told the story above and below and said like, listen, we think there was a misunderstanding. It's not a mute wall, it's not a blind wall, but it's a mute wall. And if it's about a mute wall, this fits with the idea of our companies. And we like to change the idea and say like, it's a wall, still of cement tiles, but it sends out what happens inside, controlled, maybe changed and whatever. So we had to deliver, for example, when they're making decors. So we delivered a small DVD to the mayor's office and to the councillor's office as a final proposal. I think still it was, and it is still a good idea. It's an idea, although 2 hours later we got the DVD back saying no, or a window. Maybe it was finally this sketch which could not convince him, although we declared it the sketches with the music box, the styles with the music box. Anyway, that's why today the facade is just white. It's still waiting for its finishing. Okay, it's maybe a mental idea, but okay, it's my first example to say like, we had at that moment a no. We did not do what he wants. He wanted to have something else, but he has a white, now it's a white paper. He accepted it as a way in between. Do we miss the tiles? Yeah, we do miss them, but maybe we don't miss them anymore in the way as just a cover. We miss them in the way of the new idea that came along. The blind wall was interchanged by the mute wall, and it gave new opportunities. They say that Le Ballet and Lot, that they still want it, and they still hope one day they can do it. We'll see what happens. But to me, we stopped 1 year the project. Was it a no, a yes? I don't know, but it was something. Second project. It's a study on an urban city block, not really in the center of the city of Ghent in the 19th century. It's Ledeberg. And you see an ordinary block with houses around and with gardens around. And in the middle you see what we are heading for. It was an urban design project. We had 5 of those blocks. And the thing was that they asked to make research. What can you do with the blocks? On the other hand, they had already also immediately what they want, because they talked in the brief constantly of public space, shared space, and such. And exactly, I don't have that picture with me. But what you see in the model here in the middle is today, and it is still today, a place filled with garages, boxes for cars. And they enter the space there from over there, and it's full with this asbestos, cementos, plates, and cars. So you could say, yeah, it's a good idea from the city to make a public space out of it. But then comes the research part, there comes the hearings, you talk with the neighbors, and such. And when the neighbors heard that a new city park, small park, with a playground for kids should arrive there, they got anxious. And they said like, no. When now, today, the noise, it's a really silent block, and today you have only, in the morning, people leaving with their car, and in the evening, 5, 6 o'clock, people coming back with their car. And we don't have any, we have a kind of peaceful atmosphere. Imagine that this shouting kids would be entering this building block. And I have to say, I was a little bit shocked, because you think about, well, kids, we can't have anything against kids. But on the other hand, I understood that this kind of preoccupied format of making a park is maybe not the only way you could do it. So what we presented was an idea which liked to share many things. First of all, we made a kind of new repartition system of the gardens. Today, all those gardens are long gardens. And we just wanted to give them a kind of change, a kind of knick, whatever, so that when it comes to the private conditions, people could have another type of garden or could catch the latest ray of sunlight a little bit later a day. Secondly, we believed also that, in fact, those sheds with all those garages, of which we found out that half were used for garage and half were used for storage, it had something also. It was also exactly the place where kids loved to play in this kind of abandoned situation. So what we proposed is that, okay, let's make maybe a kind of more friendly figure of the behind scenery, give people longer gardens, but also almost give every garden a kind of small extended volume or roof that they could use to park their car or to stuff their stuff. And to have a kind of new other idea, which was maybe not exactly a public park, which was about the, let's say, making better the private conditions together with a kind of nice backyard in which those kids also could make their play without needing extra public playground equipment. The people, they liked it. But the city didn't. The city said, no, this is not our vision on sharing public space. Sorry for this, and we lost all the jobs. We lost the other 5 or other 4 building blocks also. And to me, it was, or it is still today, something amazing to say, like, I don't think we really were against the public idea, but we discovered that in fact the public idea we needed to design was already preoccupied by form, by ideas, and we could not move on than only produce a playground. While this, I believe, was something different. So, were we successful? No. But at least we said no to the other preoccupied idea. And also at the end phase, they asked us whether we were prepared to design finally the public place they wanted. We said no. It's a small topic, but as I announced, I don't think we have large no's, but we have a lot of small no's. Project number 3. It stays. It's a building it's without building permit, to be honest. That's the point. It's a small barn in the backyard of an old farm. I will not show that we refurnished a couple of years ago, also together with people doing it themselves and so on and so on. And they have 5 kids, 4 daughters and 1 son. So it's not my family because that's the opposite. They have 5 kids. And the ladies, they grow older and they want to get out of the house and they live really far away from the city. And there was something like the barn is there and the barn is out of the range of what you can build. So you cannot use it, but the client asked us, what do you think? And we said like, okay, let's make a kind of, let's not take in account that there should be a building permit. Although on the other hand, let's do a very small intervention. So I just show this because I should have said no as architect, but I said yes. On the other hand, I said also no, in the sense that we did not do something what we have done. We haven't done it. When people come, they never mention that we have done it. It's an incision. On the right side you have the window, on the left side you have a mirror. So even looking from far away, through the landscape, you're confused when you look at it. You come closer by, the door goes open. You just can run till the end of the incision. And from the inside, the barn is now a little small, tiny house for the kids, the daughters, to live in with 4. I don't have a story with all those 13 projects. I switch from the one node to the other and they have maybe nothing to do with each other. Finally, they might have, because the no for me is related to the doubt. To me, related to maybe what Alice said, something poetic can become political, and the opposite way around. The project for a larger project, a competition we won, and then we lost. This is the first drawing, and this is the project. It's an old military building in the city of Ghent. The provincial institute bought the building to make their new provincial administration, everything together. You have to understand in Belgium, difficult to explain. Of course, you have cities and villages and all this kind, and you have the different governments, but in between there is a kind of, I could not call it a district, it's maybe a département level of policy. And anyway, now everywhere in every provincial, they built themselves an own new headquarters. This is the headquarters, in an old headquarters, a military headquarters. And the brief said ahead that possibly to make the program come through, you had to break down parts of the existing building, which was motivated, yes, by the idea, which I could understand. It is historical, but not, or not yet historical in its style. It's too much a component of all kind of things. But that's kind of like always this idea. When it's not historical, we just break it down. I'm not always sure about that. And we found something interesting in keeping it as such, especially as the idea was that their idea to demolish parts was that they wanted to have a centralized space, or at least something which was connected to each other in one movement. And finally, at a certain moment, we just entered. I think the key for our proposal was not to demolish a part and make a new piece of architecture, but was to make a connection between the buildings only, and a connection at the first level, so that mentally the ground level became the first level, as when you walk around, you go one level lower or one level up to meet the other levels. Anyway, we had other proposals also first, but this is the proposal we handed over, and it worked. We illustrated it with drawings. Always nice to win competitions with this kind of drawings, the not rendered version of it. But okay, it's not exactly about this that I want to talk to you. What happens is the next, and I think it's maybe not typically Flemish or Belgian, but all over Europe, is that the competition was announced to be an open competition with public client and public money. Later on it faded away, or it not faded away, abruptly when we were negotiating the contract. They decided that they would not build it with public money, but with this kind of PPS constructions, public-private funding. That meant that administratively seen, we were out because it's a public tendering once again, but with other conditions. So they had to re-announce the competition. They did. Many contractors, or let's say investors, came to us, having learned that we were one of the preferred, if not the first, architect. And they came back to us and they started negotiating. And we were loyal. We said, like, listen, we will not negotiate with everyone. We will negotiate with the first to come. We were part of a team, you have to understand, with another architectural group, mainly a group which works in sustainable thoughts, with engineering groups and such. We were a complete team. And what happened at a certain moment is the next. We exchanged thoughts and ideas. We agreed on this scheme. And of course, to do that new competition, you have to invest again with your work as a practice. And the talk came on the table to say, like, okay, who's going to pay all this? And the investor was very straight to us. He said, like, everyone for its own. And we said, like, no, sorry. I don't think this is an equal thing, because at the end you just fill in your prizes and we do all the work. We did already all the work. One has to know when you got a fee for it, it was not a bad fee, but always you spent the double if you want it or not. And we said, like, no, we do not want to cope in that thing. At the end, you got already a proposal. And secondly, on the other hand, what was demanded in the second competition was all type of other things we really had to work on. And then something strange happened. One day, on a Monday, I believe, one of the team members, the engineer, who took a lead in that talk, called me and he said, like, yeah, Jan, you know, the talk on the money, and yeah, we have to knock down the situation. What's your idea? And I explained, like, listen, my idea is the same amount of competition money as before. That's half of what I will spend, but I'm happy to do that. And he said, that's a very constructive proposal. I go back to the investor, and I'm sure I will make it through. And on Wednesday, we got the telephone, or not the telephone, an SMS I got from the investor saying, thank you very much, but we will not work with you. So I called back my colleague team member, and I said to him, like, hey, what's up? We said, we did first said no, then we did a proposal, and now I got this message. And he said to me, well, it's true, I couldn't make it come true. So you're out of it. And I said to him, what do you mean with you're out of it? He said to me, like, yeah, you're out of it. I said, yeah, but we are out of it. No, he said, you're out of it. I said, oh, I am out of it. Yes, he said. Do I understand that you are still in it? I asked himself. He said, yes, we with the team are still in it, but you're out of it. Well, I said no. I mean, this is an example of saying no, and I'm very sure that it's good that I've said no. But finally, we lost the job. I don't know what they do with the idea or the concept, I don't know. But we are out of it. I said no, to think about it. I come back to the project of Le Ballet et l'Abbé as the fifth example. I don't explain the project as such, but it's just a story I tell you about it. 5 years or 4 years later, after we finished the building, we got a telephone from the client saying, Jan, we finally found the money we missed the moment you made it. You remember, we wanted to have an elevator, we didn't have money. We wanted to have a kitchen, a good kitchen in it, as we always cook together here. We didn't have money, and we want to have this and that and that and that. So they called me and they said, Jan, I'm really happy we have the money. Please do start to make some additions to the building so we can finally finish the whole program. And it made me doubt. It's not that I don't or I didn't want to work on the project, but I thought, is it interesting enough? Of course, it's interesting to be confronted with your own work and to rework it. But at that moment, I thought for a moment, like, maybe it's good we could curate it and we could ask to other offices to do all the small interventions. I found it personally interesting that what you so precisely decided at a certain moment, I could say in your life, and a certain moment in your ideas, could be within a couple of years already taken over by others. Maybe not fundamentally, it was, I believe, 400 or 500,000 euros, which is not leading to a completely remake, not at all, but a kind of interventions in it. So we said, let's say no to what was expected of us, but we said yes to something of which the outcome I could not predict. And I took very first contacts with friends of 51 of office to say, like, Noah, what do you think? They were like a little bit astonished. Well, I can tell you later on, the money disappeared again, so it did not happen. But I have to say, to me, it was a very interesting moment at that point to say, like, yeah, what would happen if immediately we would deliver it to other architects occupying the project? Unfortunately, it did not come to a point, but still it's something which intrigues me. He stopped and he starts again right now. In Belgium, you have actually today quite a scenery which is called Projects for Schools. It is a project that started, I think, now 6-7 years ago first, without, again, this kind of public-private funding. But that's the last 5 years, it's something like, it's again, they built 200 schools or something with public-private funding. And it's a story in which we did not want to participate as office anymore, from in the beginning. The reason is another project that I do not show, but it's something I try or explain from the beginning from this project. This is a project which goes ahead of that series, in fact, and it's a school for the city of Lier. This is a model photo. And I show some schemes of the idea. Actually, that's the school how it is today. Or better, that's maybe how the school was not today, was at that moment. And the school plot existed out of the building we were looking at and some old sheds. I mean, you have to imagine, and you will see it later on, this is a type of one-story high building built in the 50s, prefab concrete construction. In fact, at that moment, they were built for temporary schools, but still, in the year 2000, half of the schools are still like that. And the conditions, building physics, are really bad. So the client said, like, listen, those are too bad, so we demolished them, so you can eventually build over there. This was the previous slide. But of course, you are free to think on other spaces to build around. We asked some questions, and we were extremely interested in the idea that the topic was, of course, a sustainable, low energy, if not passive school. It was very it's still a tendency in Flanders. And we asked that if we would build it, what would happen to that school that was about to remain? They said, well, that becomes a program for the small kids. Yeah, we understood, but what are you going to do with the building physics of that building? And they said, like, yeah, that's a budget, a postponed budget, it will come ever, and then we restore this. But I thought, like, this is strange, because we just demolish part of it, because everyone says you cannot renovate it, and then another part you keep, and then you say, that's the part we're going to renovate. So we proposed something like this. We thought, like, can we make an exercise in which we start, of course, from the existing building, but then we start to turn over the existing building to be part of the new building. You know, a program has netto space and brutto space. Brutto space are all the corridors and all the technical equipment. And we thought, like, maybe we can invest with new money, really new classrooms, included the smallest kids. And we can, like a coach, just embrace the old building, and just by cutting away walls, cutting away parts of the ceiling, we could all organize the auxiliary spaces, corridors, and such. And in the middle, in the note in the middle, we could add a small kind of sports room. And it delivered that plan, of which I think also finally it's a nice plan. And the only topic was that for us, that we said, like, we made a calculation of the new one, we made a calculation of the renovation of the other one. We were, of course, more expensive than building only a new building, but we were less expensive than a new building plus a renovation of another building. And finally, energetically wise, it was one complete shell. And it was shocking to understand in the jury, and afterwards also, comments that came afterwards, that some people really understood that this was a good strategy for a lot of those schools to think about it, but that the calculation services of the administration said, like, it's a pity, it's 20% more expensive than the budget was predicted in the beginning. So, is this a yes, is it a no? I think we sit ahead. We knew exactly that you could not ever offer this for the same price as a new one. It does not exist. We are honestly in calculating costs of buildings. But we offered it, I think, with a reasonable distance from the budget. Of course, we knew ahead that possibly this was the way to get us out of the competition. So yes, they pulled us out of the competition. Later on, other stories, other pilot projects in schools. Finally, we stopped taking part of it. Another no, another yes. A project for the extension of an architecture school. This is the plan of the school, an old abbey, and the two buildings where it's about are those two, let's say, quite similar buildings. Two pavilions. What's the story? Something strange was in this competition. You had a complete brief, and there was one drawing in it. And it was this drawing, a sketch. And that sketch was exactly about that building above there, next to the church, leaning to the church. The brief was studios for architecture education, ateliers, with all kind of details. And we looked to the drawing and we looked to the brief, we looked to the quantity of square meters we needed, and we looked back to the drawings, and we decided as next. We said, like, in fact, first of all, the typology of the building is a nice typology, and it's not a typology which is unused for this kind of studio works. It has sheds, it has a clear structure, And we said like, well, this drawing, whatever it's in it, it's not explained that it's in it, why it's in it, it's in the brief. Well, maybe we should not design another school or another project. We love it. It was well situated, the proportions were good. The only thing we found out is that it was half of the program. So as there was a specific garden with a specific outlet, we just decided to put the same volume in a kind of point mirror position the other way around. And the material, as this was nicely, we discovered brickwork. You can't see it here, but it was drawn like this. We said like, let's not add new material, we just mirror it out. Another thing of saying no, I mean, we said no to the idea of the pure conception of a new idea. Of course, it's as conceptual in another way, but it was interesting. We won the competition later on. I think it was a really brave position of the school that they dare to accept such a proposal. And I add the next thing. We recognized the style of the drawing. And yet before we handed in the competition, I was pretty sure from who this proposal came. So we included in our proposal that the original architect, later on, we concluded in our defense later on, that we were prepared to give the project back to the original architect. Because, not to please him, because we believed it was a really good answer to the project. So we won the project, as I said, and then we partly lost it again. And then in the meantime, the school got been eaten up by universities, and we have a complete new staff of building, maintenance, and building investments, as we are now a university, so they dropped the project. I think project number 7, it's on a building site. Is it about yes or is it about no? What's the topic? As you can see, the quality of the concrete is especially no Swiss concrete, but also in Belgium it's not that good. At least maybe the bad parts you don't see anymore right now, as we colored them. We have there this kind of cement milk that came through. So the client was ready to say, it's a public tender, was ready to say, okay, break it down, just demolish it, start all over again. Maybe this might work in Switzerland, or it doesn't have to work, as it does not happen. But to be honest, it's quite a wall. And I felt like, come on, it's true, it's bad. But is it so bad that all the energy given to that wall should be repeated again? And we felt also that the contractor, of course, he disagreed. So what could happen, and what was about to happen, is that it was coming to a real clash. You smell the odor of the court, and you would lose time, money, and all this. So all of a sudden we said like, yeah, those are really ugly things, but let's make a kind of tâche de beauté. And there was really a rusty piece, so let's make a beautiful square red thing. And we all of a sudden started to invent, during the building site, a systematic. We just pronounced every small fault we met. Like in a further stage, a contractor came, glued a plan with tape on it. We said the day after, take it away because it's going to lead to traces of the tape. Of course, he didn't do it immediately, only the week after, and there were the traces of the tape. You could not clean. So, to me, it was like, we said a no to an evident course, what normally happens in such a circumstances, and we said yes to something else. All of a sudden, it was never provided in the beginning, although it was a public tender, we were able to make a new language throughout the building, which was called the red language. All of a sudden it comes back on many places, and all of a sudden it also finds its relation to objects to which you were not expected to find a relation. And I could say, At a certain moment, it becomes very aesthetic. But on the other moment, it's very real. Here, in the connection between the two window pieces, they made a mistake. It should have been like we always want, like architects, sharp. It was not sharp. What to do? Lose time, lose money, debate, discussion. We invented one extra red stick. And this one was not a mistake. But finally, it was a good idea to paint it red and to find a beautiful story throughout it. It starts from an O, and it ends up at the end. If the last reinforcement of the wall should have been made, we said, don't break that wall, leave it like this, and we painted red. From no to yes. This is a drawing of a project that I will not show, but only of the plan submitted for the building permit. And as soon as we cleaned out the plot, we decided not to build it like that. Finally, after 3 years, the city came after it, that the building was not exactly how it was meant to be. So we just recently handed in a new building permit, stating the status as it is. I have to say that it was one of those days that I felt really comfortable, as I had to come to the city, and they said to me, "You, what have you done?" I said, "Yes, I did not build as it was expected, but I did no mistake against any regulation." And they said, "Yes, that's the problem." Because in fact, I said, "Could I get a building permit for it?" They said, "Of course. But you, why have you done it?" And I have to say, later when the official part of the meeting was done by walking out, they said like, "Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting." I said, "Yeah, it's of course interesting. Because there is something that this idea of conception and construction often needs to interfere. Even when you refurnish a house, only sometimes you understand the light when you demolish it or when you strip the parts of it." And so we walked out, and I did this kind of thing, asking them whether they could think about conditions in which we could, for those kind of projects, maybe work in the future in another way. Of course they said yes, and of course they did no. That strange project in Ordos, I do not want to talk, even I do not want to judge. I don't know if I did good to work on it, yes or no, but I show some drawings of something we profoundly in our practice worked so hard on this strange 1,000 square meter villa. And I have to say, at that time in Ordos, for Ordos, Aiwewe, Herzogenumeron, you all know the stories, I don't tell them. But at that time, we really, in the office, all worked on this project, and unfortunately you don't see it. We have 43 plans with all the brick layered, red brick, grey brick, all the columns, everything designed. Like you can see on this plan, electricity lines, everything. They even didn't ask it, but we did it. It was at that moment for the office a kind of brain drain in understanding how we could melt. We made a book with all details. We made lovely drawings. I'm not going to explain to it. We made nice models. I was really happy arriving there that at the end we brought a farm with us. I know that there were 100 or 99 others, and everyone would excel in themselves in the most fancy shapes and ideas. So I was happy to introduce a square farmstead, as generally in Flanders you could see, but then squeezed together on a 20 by 20 meter plot. So we worked it out completely, and then to tell something about China, we were about to the construction phase, and then you have this typically design studios that take over your project, and what they do, in fact, is they just redraw your drawings. They take it over and they talk with you and he always says yes, and you say like, yeah, it's a full brickwork, because the brick from Flanders and China, there was something related with the tradition, and can you do it, full walls and everything you want? Yeah, we do. But at a certain moment we got the letter saying like, oh, we are so happy, we made all the drawings from you again, and we are now through the process, we're going to make it, and actually we're going to build it like this. It's going to be a complete concrete thing, and then we glue tiles on it. So I were like, fuck, they didn't understand whatever. So we backed off, and we were at that point like, no, this is not going to happen. But then we sent back this, and we said like, well, you know, it's a very good idea to do it completely in concrete, because then it's in fact a one-to-one model. So the only thing we then have to do is to paint it in white. Then you have really a plastic model, one could say. But at some point, you will make it like we wanted it. And we referred to the idea, I would say, of a fresco, of a ruin, of a, let's say, a room that had been reconstructed, and almost the white is added to a faded away building. I have to say, somehow we liked it more. I thought it was even a better idea. But on the other hand, we understood the possibilities of this idea. I think we could think that they could accept this, because that's a way in between, that some parts would be built in real time. On the other hand, we thought like, well, maybe we made really an argument to force them back towards the original project. It's the last thing that happened. They wrote us a letter back and he said, now we really understand what's so important for you. So actually we're going to make the building in brickwork as you provided it from the beginning, because this is even more difficult to us. It took 2 weeks to understand later on that this orders bubble was really a bubble. So everything came about it. But it's, and yes, indeed, one of the moments you struggle with is no, yes, no, yes. Did we say yes? I don't think we said yes, but we discovered the possibilities of saying no and proceeding a project by that. That's also, I think, the question of yes or no to me, it's not a question of yes and no. The question is maybe how yes moves a project and how no moves a project or an idea or an ambition. We are almost there. It's a project for the city in Ghent. And it's also, well, it's an ambitious project. It's like they call it a public investment company. It's a kind of like a simple private investor, but then from a public status. So they have special conditions, but they behave like a private investor. And what they do in the city of Ghent, it's called projects. They buy old houses, rows of houses, and then they demolish them, they divide them again, and they sell small plots to young families and for really cheap conditions, but they have to work with some of the architects of the list. And in their project they have a kind of closed view, because okay, it's a cheap piece of land, but in Ghent it's always a bad piece of land. You always need to have piles, so it costs more. And also, they claim the idea that they do it for young couples with no money, but at the end, they need 350,000 euros, which is for a small young family often not that easy. Some are, those who are in some sustainable ideas, they always have more money. I don't understand the link, but it's like this. And we always get those clients who in fact cannot follow that standard. So they come to us because they always think like, with those guys you can invent something. So yes, that's what we did for this young couple. In fact, we had to build the complete width and the complete depth, which is, I believe, 9, I don't remember anymore, by 5, or yeah, something like this, or 5 by 10. But the budget our family had was nothing more than 1 level, 2 levels, and a pitched roof yet there, which is not exactly what you want to see happen in the city, that you would arrive on a simple house of half the height. I have to say, for another project, we are considering that proposal to do it. Not to blame it, but there is something else interesting. But at this time, at this moment, we did not. And we proposed, as it is built now, a house which is a kind of tower house with every level one room, just stuck, and there is one room here below the workspace, and above it's one time divided for children room. But anyway, it delivered us a cheap construction, right away, upstanding. But the debate was this. It's not, we didn't want to build ahead, we didn't want to build at the back, we wanted to build in between. We wanted to think also how houses in a city could be related to the street. And we thought it was an interesting point to have a setback. It's not that we don't want to follow row housing, but maybe we could differ a little bit in the idea of the row house. And I have to say, it took us almost 1 year to defend this project, to get it really done. We made a garden, as you see in this early photographs. The plant starts to take over from the neighbor in it. Today it's full of plants. We made a garden. We made, I think, at the end, we explained to the city in many meetings, we do think we make just a better house. On one hand, we follow the constraints of the budget. On the other hand, we create another way of life possible into a city. Twice there was a moment but together with a client we said like, let's not do it. Let's not do it. But I'm happy we said no, neither the client, neither we. Because finally, not only for the idea of the city we could deliver another type of typology, one could say, but finally we were also able to build for this family a house instead of advising them to rent or to buy an apartment. Once you are there, then in this China, you meet a lot of people. And then I learned to know a man from the city of Ghent I'm from, Frank Uiterhage, who unfortunately passed away a couple of years now. And Frank, he was in fact the one who met the young Weiwei decades ago now and built for Weiwei this compound he was living in the moment Weiwei was jailed in his own house. And Frank also lived at the same plot. He was also involved in this jailing and all this kind of stuff. We never will know all the details. Anyway, throughout the years I got along with Frank. We saw each other many times. And he was, to me, a kind of reference person. I could talk with him about many things. Anyway, we did something in China happily. But the moment came that Weiwei was jailed, and one of the starting moments of the whole story starts with the demolishment of the just-be-built artist residence in Shanghai, which delivered beautiful pictures, I have to say. Especially that this picture is not before the project, but after the project. Anyway, of course, you feel, as I said, we learned to know each other better, so also a couple of times Weiwei, and then everyone wanted to do something, and I thought like, well, maybe with the 100 architects, we should do also at least something. So with Frank, who lived in Beijing at that time, I could not get in contact as he was followed and closely followed at that time. So he walked then around in Beijing, and you can go in the hutongs and then go inside somewhere to drink a tea, and he always phoned me from another place. Because I had an idea, and I said like, well, the idea could be the next. This is this Bailoke city. We are here with Le Ballet behind that building. It's a beautiful place. And I thought like maybe it's nice that we do something stupid but good, efficient. We asked to the 100 architects to deliver a demand for building permits of the Shanghai residences in their own area, land, country, village, whatever. And we just collected this. It's a little bit naive, I know, but I love to be naive sometimes. And we asked to the or we wanted to ask, because it never came so far, we wanted to ask to every architect to deliver a plan, a document in which was stated that the city of the village accepted the demand. Of course, we were not longing for having a demand. That would be too complicated. And to have a photo collage of the project in their own city with this measurement element that where we use to measure things. As we had to wait for plans a long time, coming from a gallery in New York and all this kind of stuff, we were ready with everything, website and every document, and we contacted the press, and it was unexpectedly, it was not that we knew it was happening, it was 1 week before there came the news, every action stops, there is something ahead. Weiwei comes out, well, later on Weiwei came clear out of the jail, going for his house, but anyway, it stopped many actions. But to me, the story was much more fascinating in the sense that I proposed to the mayor of Ghent, that he could have the honor to relaunch with us the idea. And it's important to say is that Weiwei got his first exhibition in Ghent in Europe when he was young. And secondly, he got also a doctorate of honor recently of the University of Ghent, recently before he was jailed. So I thought, like, let's give a kind of prime time opportunity to the city to announce that they accept the demand for building permit on the cultural site of the old Bijloke hospital of Ai Weiwei. And the major said to me, no, I'm not going to do that. Because the involvement of the Chinese investors in the harbor of Ghent are so important that unfortunately I cannot help you, and I ask you to stop the action immediately. I didn't have to stop it because of him, but it was Frank who gave me a phone call saying, like, hold your horses, something is coming on. The last project, before we go to Ante Timmermans, is maybe the very first project that may changed my life. No, that I was like, moved me. It was not directly after I left school, but somehow. And it's a villa in the city of, or near in the suburbs of the city of Brussels. It's a handmade drawing on checkered paper with all kind of collage technique, the whitener used for the facade. And me and a friend, we got this job from a young guy our age who inherited the house and who explained how he saw his life and he wanted to stay alone. But anyway, the villa was too small to him. It was a beautiful villa, although, my opinion, at least larger than the house I used to grow up, and a beautiful garden. And he said, like, no, I want to have more space, and when we listened to him, it should have been the double. We went out and we thought, like, yeah, come on, we have this job. But we started to hesitate, and we thought, like, we do not understand why we and where we should add volumetry and such. So we changed the idea, and the only thing we could discover in the house is that maybe the floor ceiling was not very, it was quite low. So we made 4 drawings, handmade drawings, and we proposed to dig out a house. It has a basement, it has a large garden, the slope should not be that much, and we proposed to take away the floor between basement and ground floor, saying to him, like, well, the topic of space is not the topic of square meters, but the topic of space itself. And maybe by this simple thing, you might have a completely other house that filled your need to have space. The client, he laughed constantly half an hour. And he really asked, do you believe it? And is it really the proposal? And we said, like, yeah, we believe in it. So half an hour later, we found our back at the front door. We lost as youngsters quite a job because there was money available. And it would take the next 6 years to get another job. really. But we thought like, there is something in it. There is something which was different from previous ideas, and it kept on longing, and it became a kind of emblematic set of drawings that sooner or later always came back. Okay, 13 small stories on no and yes, or mostly on no, and then at the end, finally yes. As I started with showing the Alice idea of something poetic might become something political, and something political might become poetic. Maybe it's too ambitious, let's say pretentious, to think that the 13 projects might be related to the idea. I normally, in other circumstances, talk in another way about projects. Now I admit some moments of eventual no's, eventual yes, of eventual strategies, of eventual politics. My opinion is it's never one or the other. That's what I like in the idea of Francis Alice. Now, to finish, Ante Timmermans, Mettre en jeu, you see it here, in his drawing, he's the artist. Op het spel zetten is the Dutch translation of mettre en jeu, or in our case, mettre en jeu is the translation of the Dutch, where it's about. When I talked about the school we worked on, this is the same type of school. It's a setting of, I believe, this kind of prefabricated concrete schools, and that's the original plan of the plot, and you see out the spread all over the plot. And you saw with me, yes, it's true, the conditions of the buildings, it's no good anymore, although on the other hand, they are related to a certain time, architecture, optimism at that time, optimism as well in the way they constructed it, but also as schools were perceived, separate classes in separate buildings, kids could get out and all this kind of things. Today we think different about schools. We think schools need to be compact schools. Kids need to be protected because the street is full of dirty men. And it's a completely other vision. So, okay, I have to say, it's not a project of us, it's a project of Bart de Hane and Paul van Sillegem. And I have to say, it are nice buildings. Although they had to deal with building physics and dirty men, they made nice schools of it. But the project needed to have also an artistic intervention, and that's always very dangerous. On one hand, it's a system that exists in Flanders, and you could say at the end it helped artistic intervention somehow, but often it ends up in decoration. This is one of those 14, I believe, or 12, I don't know anymore how much, it doesn't matter, pavilions that's still on site. This is the plan and the facade. This is the drawing of the artist. Here we have the schools with 2 canopies, but here you still have one of the pavilions. Ante Timmermans, as artistic intervention, asked not to make, buy or hang work of him, but he asked to keep one pavilion. It's a very interesting intervention. First of all, the argument by saying like, you can save money. You don't have to demolish it, because demolishing it also costs money. Secondly, to get the program of those schools, it was a long history to tighten the program, to get it all done. And now you deliver a kind of non-programmed extra space. On the other hand, the artist said, like, and maybe for the first years we should not enter the space, but we should keep it as an empty box. Everyone is longing for, everyone is looking for. And we'll see what happens on with the project. Anyway, I love to bring this example back, although it's not as such a project of our practice. We are friendly related with Ante, that's true. But to understand this critical moment, I don't like saying critical moment because that's so... Anyway, to understand this moment that someone said, mettre en jeu, op het spel zetten. It means risk something. Because, of course, in the beginning, the client, they were like, what the hell do you mean? And then he explained it gently, and he said like, well, maybe it's interesting. Then they forgot about it, the building process came, then the school was delivered, went open, and then they went back to the artist and said like, what do we have to do with it? And the other says like, well, nothing, maybe just nothing. You have it, but if you don't have any idea, don't do anything with it. Let's keep it closed for a couple of years and just think about the space. When the invitation is to think about no, I think, yes, like the politics and the poetics of Francis Alice, and this invitation and this project on no, I really love to frame our thinking in between. Might sound pretentious, but maybe not completely. This is the actual status. Sorry, it's a blurry photograph. And I end up with one of the drawings of the artist out of the small pocket in which he relates the city to the new schools and the old pavilion in between. And then you understand much better than I do, wir brauchen mehr Dada. The projects I've been showing are not only mine. They are us, our projects, Inge Vink, Jo Tailleux, and myself. And to kick you out, maybe just this last thing, which is about saying no. It's a small piece of furniture we made. It's related to the idea of this photograph we took at Villa Tugendhat of Mies van der Rohe in Brno, 1 week before it was closed for renovation. And we took this photograph. We took a lot of photographs in the house of, let's say, damaged parts of the house. You know, this house is not only a marking point in architectural history, but also in the history of the European history as such. So a lot of things happens, and a lot of things have been badly damaged, but then this is, I think, beautiness in itself. Maybe it's the reason why I do not want to visit the villa anymore today, because all traces in the renovation for sure will be faded away. You see the chromé baluster when you walk down to the basement, the lower parts, and you see the possibly restoration of a very damaged part by a silver tape, a kind of silver duct tape, and all of a sudden you see the beautiness between the cheapest possible silver and the expensive possible silver. And it led to, in other circumstances, making pieces of furniture, to the small table, which is a black metal round disc, polished with diamond to get it mirrored as above. That's a fresh one, but not been sealed by the procedure of chromé. That means that all the beautiful of the efforts of the diamond polishing, as soon as you bring it back to the air, it starts to get rusty. And it depends on whether you put it in your bathroom or in your living room, whether you every day clean it by a dry cloth or not, whether you have parties and forget the glasses till the next day, how fast it will fade away. It's maybe just one, let's call it then, poetic answer on the idea of saying no. Thank you. At least I opened the show for this year.
I have one, maybe it's not a question, maybe just a remark, but so you start the very generous lecture with the quote by Alice, the poetic and the political. And I couldn't refrain myself of hearing in a way to Jan de Vylder still during the presentation, which I think is interesting. So when it's dealing with the poetic, it's like even this last couple of slides. But when you're dealing with the political, which is often a harsh no, you know that it's very hard to understand. I heard something else.
Frustration? No.
Not frustration.
No.
But I heard like almost like you geared up almost in a more energetic way. Although maybe the political no was final in most of those projects, like the school, like so the public-private partnership projects, the provincial headquarters.
But Well, but I think that's exactly in the quote of Alice. I do think that in the double sentence, he does not want to admit to one or the other. And he rather likes the idea. I could say, I think this is very political. I could say this is very political to me in the sense that thinking about architecture as the upgraded form of building, as the upgraded form of life. We do not say too much the word architecture to everything, but it could be nicer if we could use it as a word for almost everything. I mean, silver, diamonds, labor hours, and then not sealing it with chrome. It's not only against the beautiness of the chrome table, but it's also for me, myself, a fundamental question. Anyway, the upgraded scale of architecture, we're all longing for the perfect execution, the perfect client, the perfect project. Does it make sense? Because the rusty one is much more dealing with life. And it's, for me, a statement that you could say, well, even if I never will be so old that I will drop through the table because it's rusted completely away. So I do think that something poetic becomes something politic if you really think about it in another sense than just loving it. While something politic, I think, to me, this loss of project also is, to me, a very poetic moment if I will face in a couple of years, probably, seeing there a project which will never have had any drawing as a drawing we had, I think. Maybe now I'm naive, I'm simple, and I don't know. But I do also see in those political moments a lot of possible poetic actions.
For instance, in the case of the parking lots, the inner courtyard parking lot, you got really, really close to this kind of duality of prosthetics and politics, and still it didn't convey the image of perfection and beauty which is expected apparently.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe, I don't know, I mean, to me it's like, I think there's a lot of preoccupation in architectural thinking. And not anymore amongst architects also, but seemingly architecture the last decades became a wider. See how many students schools are attending. See the weekend magazines of all expensive papers telling you how to behave, how to live, how to think, how to drink, how to eat, everything. So there is on one hand a very larger idea already. And to be honest, this kind of thinking like Aldo van Eyck's playgrounds, for example, Jan Gehl's thinking, Christopher Alexander's way of looking to the things, they are almost opposite to those kind of ideas which go around in architecture at this moment as being the most ultimate way of life. While I think that with that proposal particularly, we fulfilled needs, but also we created corners behind kids could hide themselves away and would not only play with normative and regulated and standardized playgrounds in which maybe finally at the end it would happen that they were not allowed to play anymore after 7 o'clock in the evening or something like this. Now it's something which, yeah, I don't know, I mean, I agree, it's maybe the project in which it's most comes together. Oh, I agree, it's not about agree, yeah, it's an idea on it. Thank you.